He saved me a lot of times.
Yeah, I would think so, but that's not wronging someone.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3. You can always email us at decodingtv@gmail.com. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. Patrick, we're going to dive into what happened this episode. Let's, actually, before we get into the episode, though, I want to talk about the reaction to last week's episode of the podcast and to the show. We are going to spoil everything that's happened in The Last of Us through this week. So, be prepared, right? Don't keep listening if you don't want to be spoiled. But last week, obviously, was a huge episode in the show. They killed off Joel Miller, one of the two main leads of The Last of Us Season 1. And it seems clear this week they are shifting the focus of the show, and they're making it so that Ellie is the main character. They're hoping that she can anchor the entire show. And we'll talk about whether we feel that's effective or not. But one of the things we discussed in our bonus episode, available for paid decodingtv.com subscribers, is how they chose a different path for Abby in the show than they did in the game. In the game, you start playing as Abby. You don't know why you're playing as her. You don't know what her mission is. She meets Joel and then kills Joel, and there's no explanation for why that occurs. You only find out later what the real reason was, which honestly feels to me a lot more realistic as to how it would actually go down. And then in the show, you learn right from the first minutes of Season 2, Episode 1, why Abby is there to kill, what she's trying to do.
We kill him slowly.
She gets a whole monologue where she explains to Joel why she's killing him. Then she kills him. And in the bonus episode, Patrick and I discussed we didn't feel like that was that made the Abby stuff as effective. The Abby stuff felt less effective in the show than the game. Now, according to the Last of Us official podcast, they have explained why they gave Abby more characterization in the show. When the video game first came out, Joel Miller was an extremely beloved character. And so when Last of Us Part 2 video game forced you to play as Abby as a character that would then murder Joel, it produced some amount of controversy, Patrick. I think it is fair to say.
Yes.
I think a lot of people hated that decision. I think that's a fair statement. A lot of people did not appreciate that they had to do that. And they had so much anger about this that they started harassing the actress who played the voice of Abby in The Last of Us Part 2, the video game. Which is very, very ugly. I don't even know why you would ever do that person. Again, to our earlier points in the podcast, some these people show up, they perform a role, and then they leave, and literally they have no influence over a lot of what else happens in the project.
I believe Caitlin Dever, who portrays Abby in the show, ended up getting additional the worries over the toxic behavior from some of the worst parts of online culture and how they harangued and harassed this voice actor. Caitlin Dever ended up having extra security while they were filming the show out of an abundance of caution that, in theory, somebody could take that anger and exert it in real life to this character now portraying a very controversial. I mean, I don't think it's controversial, but became a controversial figure amongst some of the worst circles on the internet. And
that's apparently one of the reasons why they did it the way they did it too. Was they gave you more of Abby's backstory in order to increase the amount of sympathy for her, and to kind of help to make her more understandable and theoretically preempt or head off some of these death threats. Now, let me just say, if that helped to make Caitlin Dever, the actress's, life easier, I fully support. Great. I am angry that is even necessary. It angers me that people do this kind of bullshit, and it really upsets me that any actor who is in a thing like this needs to worry about death threats. That's not okay. But it is in my opinion, a valid reason to try to do it. I don't know that it's effective though. To me, it doesn't strike me as effective. But if it was, great. Who knows? We can't really know. But I wanted to convey that was the case. Patrick, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I sort of come down to a similar place that I was with you before. I sort of understand how we arrive at this, but I do think it undercut the moment. I think that moment is more powerful in the game as a result of the way the information is shared. And again, it's still a very powerful moment in the show, but one that I think could have taken. I mean, I don't know if you had this experience, but now that multiple times in the past week when I've been around people talking, it was like, oh, thank God, like this part happened in the show, so I can finally like talk about this big moment that was in the game. And I've explained to a couple of people, like, well, when this is what I experienced in 2020 when I played the game, and like here's why it was different, and like here's how I felt about Abby because of the information I didn't have. And multiple people like put their hand on their mouth. It's like, I cannot fathom having this character come in, kill off Joel, and just having no idea why they did it for like a dozen hours in the game. It's like, yeah, it sucked. Like in a good way. Like it was effective. And maybe maybe it was too effective, and like maybe that's
Right.
one thing we'll never quite know. Or maybe it'll come out in interviews. Is again, this is not a classic adaptation. Like the original creatives are involved deeply in this, and it makes it a unique adaptation as a result, in which you can view the adaptation as a second chance for Neil Druckmann at Naughty Dog with these characters, with this story. And then you also have Craig Mazin, who is, deeply involved, making lots of choices, but it makes it hard to pick apart, like, why was this choice made? Is a change of heart from Neil Druckmann as a result of several years of looking at the feedback to the original game? Is this Craig Mazin coming in with a different? Yeah, I don't know. It's a mixture. Might be all of the above,
Yeah.
but it makes for a fascinating conversation. And as we'll get into in this episode, they continue to make different choices as they have gone along in this adaptation.
There's one other thing I want to mention before we move on, which is I'm very haunted by Anna Gunn's editorial from the New York Times from 2013 called "I Have a Character Issue." I don't know if you've read this, but Anna Gunn,
Yes, I remember
the
that.
woman who played Skylar White in Breaking Bad, wrote about this situation. And she wrote very powerfully about it, about how she became the target of people's online vitriol. She says, quote, I'm reading from the article, at some point on the message boards, the character of Skylar White seemed to drop out of the conversation, and people transferred their negative feelings directly to me. The already harsh online comments became outright personal attacks. One such post read, could somebody tell me where I can find Anna Gunn so I can kill her? Besides being frightened and taking steps to ensure my safety, I was also astonished. How had disliking a character spiraled into homicidal rage at the actress playing her? But I finally realized that most people's hatred of Skylar had little to do with me and a lot to do with their own perception of women and wives. Because Skylar didn't conform to a comfortable ideal of the archetypal female, she had become a kind of Rorschach test for society, a measure of our attitudes towards gender. End quote. Anyway, fascinating reading. I do think it's relevant to this lens of like how Abby was perceived in the game. It may or may not be relevant to how Abby, the character, is perceived in the show. We still have yet to really see. There is one other thing I want to address before we get to the episode, Patrick, and that is we did get a few comments from people saying, "Hey, would love for you to evaluate this from the perspective of a show watcher and not a game player." Sadly, Patrick and I have both played the game. Even Christian Spicer, who I hosted the first season with, he's obviously also played the game. I would like it just didn't work out to get somebody who didn't play the game to talk about the show. What I can promise is that I'm very vigilant about spoilers for future game stuff. We do not spoil anything from the future in the game. If there's anything even close to it, I will delete it from the podcast. So like to protect people. But yeah, I'm sorry that we cannot provide an unfettered, show only perspective. That said, if you do have a reaction that you want to share to Joel being killed in the show and you have not played the game, feel free to send us a voicemail at decodingtv@gmail.com. Would love to kind of hear what people's reactions have been. Were you upset by it? Did you see it coming? Just like let us know what you thought of it. And are you going to keep watching the show? Or does this like kill your interest in the show? Feel free to record a little voice memo. Send it to us at decodingtv@gmail.com. If we get a few, I'll play them on the air. All right. Wanted to address those things before we get to this week's episode of The Last of Us. Patrick Klepek, let's talk about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3. What did you think of the episode?
It's interesting. Like immediately, I'm going to talk about the the video game, but I don't. And this is more my an emotional. Like I don't. It's very difficult for video games to make me cry. There is something about video games and the way I engage with them, the way I have a controller in my hand. even if a story is being told that would be the kind of thing where it's very easy for me to cry. It just doesn't really happen in video games. Like I can count it on half a hand, like when that has happened.
I think that's true of me as well. I think that's right. Yeah.
And the only time it really happened was like when I was most emotionally raw in like the wake of my father passing 10 years ago. And like that, like it needed to like claw open my heart. And then like one thing, a game called Papa EO, like got me. It was a game for the PlayStation 3 many years ago. It just doesn't happen. I can be shocked. I can be thrilled. I can be awed. I can be sad. But it's like I have trouble breaking that barrier emotionally. And so I found this episode to be like very cathartic, emotionally moving. I found myself like, brought to tears multiple times, like re-experiencing things that I played those similar moments in the video game like a week ago, and I just passed right through. And here I found myself like really, really taken. So I found it to be a very emotionally powerful episode. And this is not something we're going to talk about in this segment. This will be in the bonus. And especially because I want to be cognizant of how people are perceiving our conversations. I think fans are going to be very upset with some choices that were made in this episode, different from the game. I can allude to that when we get into some of the conversation, but I will leave the specifics of that to the bonus. But if you know, you know. And I'm curious how they're going to play out that part of the storyline going forward. But I found it to be a very emotionally powerful episode, a like really kind of wonderful. I don't think it's the last we see of Joel. I suspect that Pedro Pascal is going to come back in some sort of flashback at some point. I don't know that for a fact, but it feels like we'll see him again. But if we don't,
I think it's safe to assume based on what we have seen in the trailers.
Okay.
There are scenes in the trailers that have not appeared in the show yet.
Okay, all right. So, but if that wasn't the case, I found this to be like a very fitting and powerful way to say goodbye to a character that meant a lot to people and to Ellie.
Yeah. I was not as a fan as you, but I do appreciate what you're saying because there is a scene in again, really trying not like this is praising the show actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but there's a scene. Many of the scenes in this episode are very similar to how they are in the game, and there's a scene in the game and the show where Ellie goes to Joel's closet and like kind of like embraces his old jacket, right? His Carhartt jacket.
Yeah,
and
that's what got me. That was
yeah.
Like,
and in the game, it's like press X to smell Joel's jacket, and it's not very effective. And in the show, it's like Bella Ramsey is actually having a moment that's very, very powerful and potent. And I was like, wow, yeah, this does hit differently than the game. So anyway, all that stuff I think is very effective. Bella Ramsey and Tommy's the character Tommy mourning Joel, I did appreciate that. This episode is really just setting up pieces for future episodes. It's like a transitionary episode, and in that regard, I think it does a pretty good job. But like,
not much happens.
Yeah, not much happens. It's like, I mean, stuff happens, but it's just like not much notable. It's just like literally we're moving characters from one place to the next so that more interesting events can occur.
Yeah, it's a chess piece and like emotional like beat for all the characters involved. But yes, it does feel like we almost experienced. I know we're not halfway through this. I mean, I guess we're like, but it felt like the first two episodes were one part of the season, and now this episode is setting up like the meat, like what is actually happening. This like we had the instigating event with the death of Joel, a moment to process it, and now setting up what this season is actually about, and as a result, not too much happens here because we need to get our characters from one location to the next.
All right, let's talk about some of the stuff that happens this episode. In the cold open, we see Tommy say goodbye to Joel. Joel's body is on the table. I guess Pedro Pascal didn't want to work that day, so I don't think we actually see his face. It's just like a body double.
Look, he's used to this. On The Mandalorian, most of the time he's not underneath that suit.
I will just say the whole time I was watching this, I was just like, Pedro Pascal, that is not Pedro Pascal's body. That is some person whose body double of Pedro Pascal that looks like him, kind of. I could not shake that fact. But anyway, Tommy says goodbye to Joel. It's pretty emotional. Ellie has a PTSD flashback of watching Joel die. And then cut to the opening credits. And then it's 3 months later. Ellie is seeing a doctor. She meets up with Gail. She mocks Gail's efforts to care for her. Then she goes home and looks over some of Joel's things. She sees a red box on the bed that has the watch that Joel got in the very first episode of the series, plus Joel's gun. You see, it's the duality of man, Patrick. Love and also brutality. Dina arrives and brings some baked goods as a peace offering because she knows that Ellie will be pissed when she reveals that she knows most of the names of the people that killed Joel and where they're heading. The people are Manny, Owen, Nora, and Abby, part of the Washington Liberation Front, a small regional group trying to fight Fedra. Ellie tries to convince Tommy to go with her and kill these WLF people. And Tommy says to do a posse right, which apparently involves sending 16 people out there, they'll have to bring it up at the council meeting. At the council meeting, people share differing thoughts, but one of the people who really is in favor of Ellie's plan is Seth, the bigot who called Ellie a bad word a few episodes ago. Ellie pleads for justice, not revenge, but by a vote of 8-3, the proposal is rejected. All right, let's pause here for a moment, Patrick. This stuff with the council, it's all like new stuff. None of this is in the game. I'm curious, like as a show watcher watching the show, like, did you think this is effective? Did you buy this whole council scene? What did you think of Ellie's speech? Any thoughts?
I actually thought this stuff worked really well. The game, things happen pretty quickly from the death of Joel to Ellie seeking her revenge. Here, I think it's the advantage of what you can do with television shows, is feeling the weight of Ellie's frustration, like trying to do things the right way, like trying to talk to a therapist, like trying to go to the council, like doing how do I achieve? It's a question of how do you achieve justice? In what form does it arrive? And how does your desire for justice affect those around you? And this episode is a way of sitting with those emotions so that by the time Ellie actually gets on a horse and leaves with Dina to go to Seattle, I think you're kind of, you tried, get your ass out there and go do it yourself. I think it's meant to sort of experience some of the frustrations that Ellie would naturally have in this moment and kind of slow walks her process of getting out of there. I thought it worked pretty well and speaks to the game doesn't spend much time fleshing out Jackson as a character. This show is obviously much more interested in fleshing out Jackson, the city as a character. And I appreciate that. I like that. I like seeing more of how does this society operate itself? And, I sort of ended up kind of agreeing with everybody at the end. I think it's probably unreasonable to send 16 people from the community after everything that just happened. And yet also, go get justice for your man. I get that too. So I think I think it was effective at sort of establishing stakes and rationales for a lot of the different people involved in this community.
Yeah, some cool things about this scene. One of them is you get competing visions of justice from different people, and it seems like the show is outlining here are the big ideas that we are going to be dealing with this season. Is what is justice, what is mercy, what is revenge, and I like that there's a kind of dialogue between these things. I also like in the show that you really feel I'm really trying hard to not compare this to the game. I am actively attempting it, but it's hard sometimes. And so hopefully when I praise the show, it doesn't come off as merely in relation to the game. But one of the things that the show does that the game does not do is you really feel to send 16 guys or even 1 or 2 people out there is using a ton of resources that need to be extremely carefully allocated in the post-apocalypse.
And for what, right? It's not what is it? Yeah. It's not that, we have no sense from the senseless killing of Joel that there are immediate consequences to be felt, other than the loss of Joel and what he brought to the community. But it is not as though hey, if we don't strike back, those raiders are going to come attack Jackson again. This feels very much like a one and done. It's a tragedy, but you're only inviting more violence and more loss by seeking the revenge that's in your heart. And I think they do. I think you're right. They do a good job of unpacking, as heated as you feel. Why does everyone have to share that burden with you? Or is that for you to bear, given that this is Again, this is a community that was having a housing crisis. Maybe they're not having that now as a result of the attack, but they'll rebuild. And like that kind of stuff is going to be more top of mind than
Right.
what do you get
Right.
by
Like,
killing
they're
Joel?
resource constrained now because of
Yeah.
the whole zombie attack last episode. So,
Yeah.
I do think that it's a little bit less clear, Patrick, than what you're making out of that it's a one and done thing. Because I think the only person that might know that is Dina, and I think she was incapacitated before they really explained.
Yeah.
So it's not like maybe they will come back if, maybe this was a test. Who knows? Like, it does appear by all accounts that this is a one and done attack, but they don't know. And that uncertainty is made clear in the episode. So anyway,
I have a question. How do you feel about them giving an arc to the bigoted character that says something like it's the show is like, again, this isn't in the game. It's like they're choosing to make that character the one who like steps up and like empathizes with Ellie and this revenge plight. Like, did that work for you? I felt kind of it didn't really work for me as a choice.
I think it worked for me because I don't know. I don't know, but I think the implication is going to be maybe if the hardcore bigot character is the one that's on your side, your side might not be the correct one. Now, I don't know. We don't know like where Ellie's going to end up character wise, like how she's going to perceive like her actions. But if that is where it ends up, then that could be like, hey, the hardcore bigot, he's the one that's rooting for me. No thanks, I'm going to change my position on this, right? Like maybe that is a valid point of view. So my answer to your question is TBD. We'll see how it all ends up. Anyway, by a vote of 8-3, the proposal is rejected. Very sad. There is a scene where Tommy and Gail talk while watching a baseball game. Tommy says about Ellie, I don't want her to go down the same path that Joel did. But Gail says some people just can't be saved. Thanks, Gail. Patrick, I'm going to put this out there. I think Gail is kind of a useless character so far, and also not the only like psychologist character that we've seen in a show we've reviewed here on Decoding TV. The Agency also had a very similar character who I also thought sucked. It feels like everyone saw The Sopranos do it, which was extremely well done, and now they're like, we should have a psychologist character to say what people are thinking, and it has not gone well. And who knows? Maybe they'll bring the whole Gale thing back around, but so far I'm not impressed. What do you think, Patrick?
I think it's mostly just carried by Catherine O'Hara being an incredible performer, and I think this role in the hands of anyone lesser, I think it would stick out much more like a sore thumb. Of like,
it would be even worse than it is. You're saying.
How do we get like the inner voice of a character out? Like we'll just get someone with a role that has to ask them questions that then they have to answer. And that's kind of all they've used her for here. And so I think she does a wonderful job. She's really fun to watch on screen. Like, I'm never going to turn down a scene with Catherine O'Hara, but in terms of what is functioning, the plot, it feels like it's not accomplishing very much, or it's being used as a crutch in a way that is unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like, I liked the Joel scene with her. Like,
yeah, that was
that
good.
made sense. That made sense to me. But now it's like, now she's just being like thrown around as a convenient conversational device with a bunch of different characters in the world. And I don't know. It doesn't feel very naturalistic. It feels a little forced.
Dina visits Ellie to find that she's already planning to leave, but Dina seems much better prepared and has an extremely intricate plan ready. In the middle of the night, they meet Seth, the bigot character, who supplies them with a bunch of what they need to make it across state lines and into Seattle. Ellie visits Joel's grave before setting off, and later they take shelter in a tent when Dina reveals she and Jesse have gotten back together. So these are some of the things that happen as they're setting out. Might be some questions from the audience about what was going on with the coffee beans that Ellie left at Joel's grave. If you will recall, in season 1, there was a bonding scene between Ellie and Joel where Joel described his love of coffee. Coffee is really difficult to get in the post-apocalypse, and so just wanted to call out that in season 1, episode 4. Joel is brewing coffee in a camping kettle, and it has some significance to them based on that scene alone. So anyway, We should point out that at one point in the episode, they cut to Seattle, and there's a group of people dressed in robes walking through the forest. Now, after the show, like promo, like they do this like behind the episode. Craig Mason does reveal that the names of these characters are the Seraphites. It's the same as the name that they same name as they had in the game. All these characters have scars, and they whistle to communicate. And they also talk about someone called the Prophet, whose teachings they follow, but who's been dead for around 10 years. One of their conversations is cut short when they are attacked by not demons, but quote unquote wolves, which the show heavily implies to be the WLF based on the cutaway that happens. The character says wolves, and then it cuts to a WLF logo. Perhaps they are the same thing. Anyway, later when Dina and Ellie wake up, they continue towards Seattle, only to find that all the people from earlier, all these Seraphites, have been murdered. They arrive in Seattle. Manny from earlier is in the Space Needle as a lookout. A WLF tank roams through the streets, and we see dozens of WLF people behind them. This is not a small faction anymore. The show seems to be saying it's not just like this splinter group. These people have a lot of resources and a lot of people to act them out, and potentially they are monstrous as well. And that's when the episode comes to an end. So, a lot of intriguing possibilities. Patrick, any other thoughts on the episode?
I will save the specifics because it is clear like there are things happening here where if we were to talk, like many times when we've sort of alluded to or just talked directly to differences in the game and the show, it's like, hey, we're not spoiling anything more, but here's like a different way they handled it. The Dina and Ellie relationship, I am fascinated to see how that evolves. There a different tact being taken so far. I expect it to be very divisive in the fandom, is what I'll say.
In the show, it's shaping up to be a meaningful friendship so far, is what it looks like.
Yeah, like right? They shared a kiss, like, and she said, the line that I expect to get a lot of people riled up was something to the effect of like you're gay, I'm not. How was it? As they're talking about rating the kiss.
You've kissed girls before. You're gay, I'm not. I'm just curious.
And the fact that she got back together with Jesse, whether officially or a fling, who's to say? But I think it's clear the evolution of their relationship is going to be a core part of this season, because essentially the show needs to establish, like, can you replace, or will it try to replace Joel?
Right.
Like, is Dina going to be the Joel character, so to speak, and like continue to have this show be a pairing? And I'm curious to see how that works. Both those actors like play off each other really, really well. Like they sell. I think Ellie's confusion and frustration, like your heart, like just goes to her in that moment where they talk about the kiss, where she it's clear she allowed for a moment to think about the possibility that this woman who clearly she's like very attracted to, she doesn't think of herself in the same way. Like, oh my God, like, could this be happening? And like you see in that moment, like the possibilities seem to extinguish between the two of them. And I don't think she finds the banter over the kiss to be as fun as Dina is making it out to be. Right. Dina's the one that has all the power in this. This, like she, like Ellie's the one that wants to be accepted romantically, and there's not much indication right now that it's going to be more than a drunken kiss at the dance, and that seems to have hurt her. And I can't blame Ellie.
You can't blame her. Way. You can't blame her for feeling hurt in that situation. I agree. I think what's cool about the episode is it feels as though Ellie and Dina are going west to solve this one problem, which is let's kill these 4 people that have obviously hurt them in a profound way. But what we see in this episode is basically they are brushing up against forces that are much larger,
deeply miscalculated,
like much larger and more broader and more powerful than they can possibly imagine. And so I'm interested to see how that dynamic plays out in the show. But yeah, so far all the show has done is set it up. It hasn't actually done anything with it, but it is fascinating. Like, oh hey, the WLF is freaking huge. Like, it's not just 8 people in, with holsters on their legs. It's like they have freaking tanks and shit. Like this is
and Ellie was gonna, she was gonna come up in her Converse. I mean, like this is somebody who is not
right.
I mean, Ellie and Joel share this with one another, in which they are very impulsive characters. Like being impulsive is what got Joel killed. Eventually, his impulsiveness caught up to him, and there was a situation he could not get himself out of. He couldn't MacGyver his way out of it. And Ellie shares that attribute with Joel, and like she was ready to hop on a horse with like no food, no supplies, and I'll just figure it out. And she would have gotten herself killed like along the way. And even though Dina and
she'd have done a Christopher McCandless Into the Wild type situation.
Yes.
Probably,
and even though she's more prepared than she was, and Dina has got a good head on her shoulders, like I think you're right. Like these factions they're coming across, the scale of these factions suggest their plan is already out the window. And no good can come of stepping foot into Seattle. And all that can happen
That's what I keep trying to tell everyone, by the way.
Like all that's going to happen as they press forward is they're going to invite an opportunity for them to get hurt, for them to disproportionately hurt others. And was Jackson ever going to be under any threat if they never touched Seattle? I think it's pretty clear now, like, no. But now that they're about to step foot in there, have they raised the possibility that it's not just a backlash for them, it's a backlash for everybody back home?
Yeah, they're tangling with forces that could really hurt them as a community.
Yes, if they wanted to go take Jackson, sure seems like they have the firepower to, if not take it, to do a whole lot of damage along the way.
Yeah. Troubling. Well, we'll see what happens as the show goes on. But those are our thoughts on Season 2, Episode 3 of The Last of Us. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.